1970 was the last time that we had a licensed product for the treatment of melanoma. And here we are in 2012 with personalized medicines, 2 coming up, which have shown that they really do have value in the treatment of melanoma.
In terms of state-of-the-art therapies, there needs to be a great understanding among the patient community what these are and how to get access to these. ECPC is involved in different research projects to facilitate improved coordination of cancer research in Europe.
When I got the diagnosis, I seriously couldn't see beyond Christmas. I didn't even know if I was going to have access to the trials that were proposed in the new targeted therapy and the immunotherapy. It was all very dark and cloudy. I couldn't even understand what it meant with regards to prognosis. Now I look back, I have gone through both of them. I have gone through some other innovative immunotherapies that are still not being trialed, and I realize, wow, I am alive. Now we're filming this, and I am no evidence of disease.
We had been lucky to have a network of friends, of related people who helped us very quickly to get onto targeted therapy. And for us, that was one of something that came as close to a miracle as possible, because this targeted therapy managed to get the tumor into regression.
The 2 drugs are 2 completely different compounds. One, it's a monoclonal antibody. It's a drug, ipilimumab, which is involved in the activation of the immune system, to say it in general terms. With ipilimumab, through the activation of the immune system, we are obtaining a beneficial effect which is appearing slowly in the time. So you require quite a lot of time before you can see a real clinical benefit. The other drug, it's vemurafenib. It's a target therapy. It's a treatment that cannot be offered to all patients. It can only be offered to those patients who present a specific mutation of the BRAF gene. The clinical results that you can see are impressive. You get a complete disappearance of the disease after a few weeks since the start of the treatment. The problem is the duration of this response. In only few patients, you can see that the disease is really went away, but in the vast majority of these patients, you see a recurrence exactly in the same places, a recurrence which is usually very aggressive.
It is so terrible to know that the second time around, the tumor will come back, and the second time you know what is expecting you. The psychological effect that has on the patient and the family around is devastating. After having had a miracle, you know that this miracle will be taken away.
We believe that the future will be the combination of more drugs.
We all agree that these 2 types of therapies need, in a long-term strategy, to be combined, because the psychological impact of having targeted therapy that gets rid of your tumors, to know that they're going to come back. And when they come back so quick that they make your head spin. It's very hard. It's very hard. And to know that you cannot then go back on immunotherapy. So there is a lot of requests from the patient community to have a clearer picture of a longer-term strategy, because we've seen the good in both. With regards to living with it, we have seen how much it can contribute to our quality of life in the sense of being integrated into life.
For EORTC, I think patient involvement is crucial. Typically when we develop a measure, even at the very early stage, we have 4 stages of development. The first phase would be when we would involve patients. So we would ask them what's a priority for them and their disease. What's the key issue for them? Is it the factor of social functioning from the treatment? Does physical functioning get impaired from the treatment? So we asked them in their own words to list what are the key issues. And then from that listing, we would eventually pull together a short index that we could then give to those patients in a larger phase 3 trial, which we could then evaluate whether a drug's effective or not, and in terms of what side effects it gives to those patients.
I was not ready psychologically to the intensity of the side effects. After a month, I was in so much pain from chronic inflammation, from all sorts of side effects of skin, and I basically was thinking there is no way I can take this drug for the rest of my life. And if I hadn't had an oncologist who had some experience and who really encouraged me, because we knew from some of the data that the side effects would get better, I was ready just to stop, because I couldn't even move. I couldn't even hold my children in my arms.
The management of side effects, it's not only medical, it's also psychological, and it involves the doctors, not only the dermatologists, not only the oncologists, but mostly an interdisciplinary board, and it's a crucial aspect of the treatment of the patient.
We were told a lot of times that this is too dangerous, that we don't know the side effects. To a patient whose option is to die otherwise, this seems ridiculous. What am I going to do? I'm going to die? I'm dying anyway. So I think this discussion cannot be done without the patient present. You cannot. If you've not been in this situation, I think you will be cautious and you will try not to subject patients to unnecessary treatment. As a patient, you might be well willing to take the risk. And we have to enter that discussion, and we have to make our voice heard, for example, to influence trial design, because that is not going to only affect us, but it will also affect others.
FDA saying, well, statistically, we don't think that that's enough, or you need to pull that second on even though you're...
We are very lucky that in the US, typically, once a drug has been approved by the appropriate regulatory agency, which is the Federal Drug Administration, most insurance companies will provide that drug, as will the government if you're over 65 and on Medicare. Clearly, that's not the case in most of the rest of the world. And so access has become a very, very important part of this process. And the patients need to fight for that access.
We know that the price of curing, of treating cancer patients is doubling more or less every 5 to 10 years. The pricing has to be planned on the basis of what is reasonable to be reimbursed within the budget that each state has for health treatment of patients. And this discussion can only be organized in between institutions which are in the role of deciding these aspects, in the budgeting evaluation of Europe, of the single states, and the pharmaceutical company. There is no other solution, because even if a product is the only product in the market, the pricing cannot be driven by the market.
Nobody thinks about the cost of the patient, and I think perhaps if we started putting a price on patient costs, not to pay the patients, but just coming up with a price for it and say, well, patients have given this much, and therefore this is a good reason to make the drugs available to patients. They've put perhaps their last few months of life on the line to participate in the trial, and that should have a worth. There should almost be a value attached to that. And that should be used in the balancing process when they're deciding whether or not our country can afford to supply patients with this drug.
And our aim is to press for action. We want the Commission to put this high on their agenda. And I think we see personalised medicine as something which is good for patients, but it's also good for budgets, ultimately. If we can focus our prescribing of medicines on to getting the right medicine to the right patient, and not do the scattergun approach of having medicines roughly in one area for everybody who has that disease, then we're obviously going to benefit patients.